Good morning and welcome to our virtual walk around the parish of Baunton near Cirencester. As you can see from this first slide, this is one of several walks that I've described in a little booklet which is available either by going onto the website and filling in a form, or you could just pick up one from the parish churches when they're back open again. The Churn Valley Way is shown by the solid red line which runs from Seven Springs in the north all the way down the valley to Cirencester. And about half the route consists of quiet country lanes and bridle ways, so it can be done on a mountain bike, but then you do have to push the bike along the footpaths. And the A435 runs all the way down alongside the River Churn. This next slide is an aerial view from Google Earth website, which is lots of fun. If you've never visited Google Earth, I recommend it. And it shows the village of Baunton at the southern end of the Churn Valley, less than 2 miles from Cirencester. And that white line that's curving across the picture there is obviously the A417 dual carriageway, which must have been there for at least 15 years, I'm only guessing, but obviously carved up the landscape in some ways. Today's circular walk, well, it's really a sort of linear there and back kind of walk, really, is shown by the dotted red line and can be easily followed with the aid of an ordnance survey map. It starts at the long stay car park in Cirencester, shown right at the bottom of the aerial view, and it's about 4 miles long. But if you go beyond Baunton, that adds a couple more miles onto it. Much as I've tried to describe the route as clearly and accurately as possible in the booklet, it's always a good idea to take an ordnance survey map, such as this large-scale version. And inside the booklet, there's a brief description of each route, and this particular one is mostly easy walking across fields. In Cirencester, the route does pass alongside the remains of the Roman wall and the grounds of the medieval abbey, which adds a bit of interest. And we shall be following in the footsteps of the Augustinian monks who once walked daily from the abbey to tend the fields at Baunton. And rather than going back again to the abbey for their prayers, which they had throughout the day, they decided to make themselves a chapel in Baunton, and we'll have a look round that. So here we are going into Cirencester, turning off the A417, of course, and on the left there is the Beaches Road, which goes into the long stay car park. Once having parked up, then, or you may have arrived by public transport, the next challenge is to get across that quite busy road, and there is a pedestrian crossing. But anyway, across the other side of there is a quiet residential area, and it's known as Corinium Gate. About 200 or 300 yards along that quiet road, you'll see a footpath going off over a little footbridge on the right, and that's the route into the park. And not far into the park, over on the right-hand side, you come to what remains of Cirencester's original Roman wall. In fact, that's a gate, and there's a display board there you can see, and this is an enlarged view of the gate as it would have been some 2,000 years ago, with walls at each side about 20 feet high. So quite impressive entrance into what would then have been, I think it was the biggest town outside of London, and on the junction of several important Roman roads. But there they are, Fossway, Ermine Street and Ackerman Street. A road would go across the town, Lewis Lane, to the Roman amphitheatre. And whilst this isn't on today's route, I couldn't help but just make a brief diversion and show you an artist's impression of what the amphitheatre in Cirencester would have been like. It was built in the 2nd century AD, and a stadium for sport and other such entertainment. Anyway, returning to the abbey, the route goes alongside that lake. Just looking across there, you get an impression of how grand the abbey grounds would have been. And they were founded, as you can read for yourselves, in 1117 and lasted about 400 years until Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries. And there was an event back in 2017 to commemorate the anniversary. Would that be the 900th anniversary of the founding of the abbey? And various mosaics are displayed on a wall at the far end of the lake. And I think the children of Cirencester, various different organisations produced various mosaics, and well worth spending a few minutes and admiring those. Soon the route curves round onto the road again through the gatehouse, which is the only surviving building from that great Augustinian abbey. And it was interesting to read up about this. There is a brass plaque or something on the wall there that describes how the grounds were purchased from Queen Elizabeth I by her doctor and remained in the ownership of Richard Masters' descendants until as recently as 1964, when the gatehouse was presented to Cirencester in memory of the late Colonel Chester Master. And I believe the Chester Masters family are patrons of several of the churches in the Churn Valley benefice. So a very important local family. From the gatehouse, we get onto the busy road anyway, onto the sidewalk pavement, and go through the lights there. That's the white way that goes up towards Chedworth, crossing over there. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little ride. We saved a bit of time by jumping in the car just then. But at the end of the metalled road, there's a little track that goes for a couple hundred yards, and you arrive at this house. It's a semi-detached house. The track actually goes straight on at that point towards Baunton. That's where the monks would have gone. But the first time I went, I rather foolishly set off down this little side path going into the fields, and ended up in trouble, really. So I wouldn't recommend that. Best to keep going up that little path there, across the open fields, very gentle ascent to some woodland, and then over a stile, very conspicuous stile. Oh, watch out for the monsters. And then down through the woodland. It's only maybe 100 yards and descends into some more fields. And these flowers were just out. I think it was May time when we did this walk most recently. And across the fields and soon into Baunton village itself. And there on the village green, they've very helpfully put a sort of layout of the village for visitors. Some pictures of a road safety campaign that they had about 3 or 4 years ago. I must say I don't envy the scarecrow there. Looks very uncomfortable position to be in. And here's somebody even worse predicament, but it makes the point anyway. And it's good to see the villagers taking the initiative like that. So here we go. Well, we cheated a little bit there, getting through the village. Just thought it would be a bit of fun to show a video. And you may have noticed I paused for a split second on the way up through the village to admire this doorway. Anyway, coming down into the parish church, which is dedicated to St Mary Magdalene, down through the porch. And this picture here was taken about 5 or 6 years ago, just before the church warden retired. And here he is, Andrew Hall, who served for many years before retiring and moving away. But you can see the beautiful old stonework through the chancel arch. And Andrew actually wrote a very good little booklet, or a book really. It's hardback, and copies are still available in the church. Covers a wide variety of issues, and describes the life of the village in terms of early history and village properties, work and play. Very nice piece of work, so would look out for that. The east end of the church is very attractive, but unusual in that there's no east window. And when the priest leads worship, he has his back to the congregation, which is the traditional way of doing things, but not one that fits very well with modern culture. But nevertheless, there's a nice intimate atmosphere in Baunton Church. And it's quite famous actually because of a 15th century altar frontal that's, as you can see, is protected in a glass case. And this is just an enlarged view of one tiny part of the pattern. It's well worth having a close look at that. You'll find it on the, let's say, the south wall as you go into the church near the organ. And for those who go into the vestry, which aren't very many of us, there's some very interesting things to see there. There's a picture of the original group of musicians, which would have been active there for many years, and until the arrival of the organ, the church organ, which kind of made them redundant. Although many people, including Mark Venn, one of our readers, very much enjoy that kind of playing from musicians of that era. There's a certificate of thanks for the support given by the church to the Royal Air Force during the Second World War. And then Baunton Church in the year 2000 must have been involved with the planting of new yew trees to mark the millennium. The main thing that people remember about Baunton Church, though, is the huge wall painting, which depicts St. Christopher stepping out across the river, carrying the infant Jesus on his shoulders. And it's not a very clear picture, but he's actually there obscured by a Victorian roof beam, which is projecting next to St. Christopher's face. And about 3 or 4 years ago, a local expert on the wall painting came and gave a very interesting talk, and she showed this slide of a similar wall painting, this one from the 13th century and in France. And of course, St. Christopher was a very important saint for travellers, and even today, even people of only fringe interest in the Christian faith often carry little St. Christophers on as necklaces. So that particular evening was a great time socially, and the church was absolutely packed. Hard to imagine these days with the COVID-19 restrictions. Oh, and I might just point out over in the doorway there, there's John Whitaker, who took over as church warden for a while after Andrew Hall had retired. Very interesting, really, how St. Christopher is so dominant in Baunton Parish Church with the wall painting, when really the church is dedicated to St. Mary Magdalene. And here's a reminder of a very nice video, which you can get on Netflix or just buy off Amazon or whatever. And it depicts Mary Magdalene in a most sympathetic and compassionate way, unlike the tradition of the church, which has cast her as a bit of a loose woman. But I would really recommend the Mary Magdalene film if ever you get a chance to see it. A few more pictures of life in Baunton Parish Church. This is obviously harvest time, a big effort going on there. And Christmas, very nice candlelit service on a regular basis. Our PCC secretary's wife, Anne Milner, is a real authority on irises, and she featured a few years ago in the Daily Telegraph. Baunton Parish Church is very progressive in many ways. They're the only one of the 9 churches in the benefice that have got Wi-Fi access, and it's free to visitors. They've also got quite ambitious plans for creating a toilet area, kitchenette, access ramp for disabled. Those plans have been around, as you can see if you look carefully, since the 15th of December 2014. But it's a very active PCC, and hopefully those plans will come to fruition before much longer. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, it's possible to turn around at that point and head back to Cirencester. You just go back down the village and head up the little side road there, and then across the fields. That's another view of the same road. The distinctive hedge there on either side of the path is a good landmark. And then there's the gateway that goes across the fields. However, for these purposes, we're going to continue up following the River Churn towards Perrott's Brook. And so that's leaving the parish church, looking back. And then within about 5 minutes walk, you're under the 417 dual carriageway, which provides shelter and shade for the sheep. And then the fields last for about another 5 minutes or so, and then into muddy tracks through the forest. I say muddy, in the summer it's fine, but just something to look out for over the winter months. And that brings us to Perrott's Brook, or the edge of Perrott's Brook. We're emerging from the woodland on the right there, where the signpost is visible, and heading up the hill to the right, or straight ahead as we're looking at it from here anyway. And it's quite a narrow road, I must admit. Important to stay on the right-hand side, facing the oncoming traffic. There's not a lot of traffic, but some of them are coming at speed. And then after about half a mile or so, you come to this junction with the White Way heading off to the left towards Chedworth. But we're going to be turning right, and again, a bit more traffic than expected on this particular day. Heading towards the pylons down the side of the road, passing a rather interesting water tower. The day that I last was here, there was some horses being exercised, until coming to the bridge over the 417. And the reason that I've wanted to include this is because of the fantastic view of the Neolithic limestone beds, which were laid down millions of years ago and had to be excavated to a huge extent to create the 417 some 15, may even be 20 years ago. Time flies. It gives a really good view of how the landscape's been modified. Well, just after that, across the bridge, there is a safe route down into Baunton on the right. You can just see it there. But for those who have the courage to walk 100 yards alongside the road, you do need to be very careful. And I've emphasised that warning sign there. Just 100 yards further on down the road, straight ahead, you come to a public footpath, and I've circled it in red there. And it goes into what looks like a private house with its grounds, but it is a public right-of-way. And it skirts the edge of the house. And here we are, that's the house looking back, having walked up there. That's a view from actually almost in Baunton village, and it just shows the footpath coming down through the fields. And if standing in the same place and turning round, this is what you see looking into the village. That's the little lane that I mentioned earlier for those who don't want to do the full walk and prefer just to go straight back to Cirencester. The little lane continues up there for about 100 yards or so, and then through this gate that I showed you before and across the fields. There was a warning sign to watch out for bulls, but the day that we went, we hardly saw any cattle at all, and certainly no bulls. So I think that's just a bit the farmer covering his back, really. And here we are, looking back towards Baunton, back at the semi-detached house that's ripe for development, I suppose is the way to put it. And from there, you can go back through the fields into a housing estate, or just retrace your steps back down the road. But I found it more fun to go through the housing estate and just basically follow your nose down Shepherd's Way and come back out at the traffic lights where the White Way goes off to the left, and then across into the Abbey grounds. And there we are, that's through the housing estate. There's the junction with the White Way, back through the Abbey grounds, and before you know it, you're back in Cirencester, the car park.